Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin. Welcome back for our 63rd episode this week, where we'll be recapping another Patriots loss, this time in Vegas to the Raiders. Again, assessing where the team is likely headed going forward and previewing the Patriots' upcoming home game versus the Bills. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats300LevelPod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at Pats300LevelPod.com. So Kevin, I know you predicted a loss. I predicted a win, but I was walking to the stadium, and even just during the game, this was one of the few times that leading into a game I just kind of had no faith. And Patriots played close. They kind of gave us the type of game that we've seen the last 3 years, where they get down early, they fight back, and then in the end, just something doesn't go their way and they lose. It was at least encouraging compared to the two previous games where they got blown out by more than 30. But again, another loss to a team that they should have won. What were your first overall takeaways from the game?
Yeah, I think you kind of really summed it up there the right way, where this was a team that they needed to beat, and they had to beat because now they're 1-5. And it's a team that was a really good spot to put them in one of those get-right games where you end up having Jimmy G getting hurt. Not surprisingly, because it happens all the time, and ended up knocking him out of the game after the first half.
And so on that note, before you even go forward, I was texting one of my friends who's a Bills fan during the game, and he was saying, at least you're probably going to a Jimmy G revenge game. And I texted him saying, with Jimmy G's injury history, he's probably going to get hurt and leave the game, and it's going to end up being a Brian Hoyer revenge game, which it ended up being. But
yep. And Hoyer kind of really looked like you would expect him to look. He had one good
looked
play.
Better at times.
He had one good play, and then the rest of it. Really, just the biggest one was that long pass. But again, you saw him getting lit up on the sideline by Josh McDaniels screaming at him at one point, which is actually really funny to watch. Because you never actually really saw him do that as much with Tom or even Jimmy, or even Mac. It was actually kind of funny to see. He was really frustrated with Brian, which he's been before. There was a time in Kansas City when you saw him when he lost track of the timeouts, and he threw down his play sheet and his headset and was visibly angry. And then we never saw Hoyer again after that. So until the following couple of years. So yeah, again, this is really frustrating. It's the way that we've seen them lose a lot over the last few years, and it's something that it's just becoming who they are, where they're just not a good enough team. Where you expect better teams to be able to go through this, and then they're falling down early, which they can't do. They need to keep what they're doing in the second half. They need to do that in the first half. They're starting off really slow, which comes down to is it coaching, is it ability, is it both, is it a combination of things, is it injuries, which they have a ton of. It's just they have a whole bunch of different things coming into them this year that are kind of negative, where they're not as talented, they have a lot of injuries, and maybe because it is the first year of these coaches with them, it's going to take a little bit of time. They don't have the time to do it, so it's pretty frustrating just to watch. And I don't have too much hope going forward for this season, but again, as we'll probably talk about afterwards, we don't really have it on the agenda, but there have been 3 recent teams in history that have gone to the playoffs after starting 1-5. The Chiefs, the Commanders, and the Lions. I think the other third one was.
Yeah. No, Lions started 1-7 last year and almost made the playoffs, but.
But there have been teams that have done it. The good thing about the AFC this year is that no one's actually running away, really, other than Miami. So they're actually only 2 games out of playoff contention right now, which is kind of sad. So likely the last team that's going to make it is going to be probably 9-8, maybe even 8-9. So there is a chance if they really, really turn things around. And if you look at the schedule, there are some opportunities coming up after these next 2 weeks. So are they able to get something going? We'll have to see, and we'll get into that later.
Yep, exactly. So I think for me, the thing that was kind of frustrating, and again, I'm usually optimistic with the Patriots just because over the last 20 plus years, we've seen them come back from games. And even the last few years, if they've come down, We've seen them be able to come back and be in position to win, even though they don't win in the end. And then this game, it just, I don't know, something about me was just telling that they weren't gonna. I had a feeling they were gonna come back and have a chance, but they were just gonna lose. My ultimate prediction, even when they were down by 9, was they were gonna get a touchdown, get a stop on defense, and then get in field position, and then Ryland was gonna miss a game-winning field goal. Was what I was anticipating happening. So again, it is what it is, but it's just so frustrating. And then in these situations where they're coming back, you see just it's not even uncharacteristic anymore. It's just mistakes happening that shouldn't be happening. When they were first and goal, when they were in the goal line position, they had 2 different penalties that forced them back, and they got lucky that there was a penalty that created a first down, as well as Josh McDaniels being an idiot and accepting a penalty that moved it to 2nd and 13 instead of 3rd and 8 in goal line position. So why give the Patriots 2 chances to score a touchdown instead of just one? But again, it's just, and then on the last drive, you see Devontae Parker miss what is an absolutely perfect throw by Mac, and just right in his hands, and he just drops it. And it's just, we keep seeing this over and over again from penalties or drops that shouldn't be dropping.
And even untimely interceptions too with Mac, so we can't take Mac completely off the hook.
Oh no, I agree 100%. I was going to get into that, and then that interception was just a horrendous throw. He had Henry open. It was a bad decision, bad throw, and then they ended up, if he didn't throw that interception, they'll likely at minimum get a field goal there. And then that last drive, instead of being down by 2, they're up by 1, and they win the game. They could have even gotten a touchdown there. So it's just so frustrating. And even with Mac, I still believe in him. He had a good game except for 2 throws. But again, those decisions are things that his rookie year, I remember us talking all the time that he's not making those rookie mistakes where you would traditionally see a rookie have like 1 or 2 plays where you're like, what the hell is that? We didn't see that his rookie year, but we've seen it almost every single game this year. And I think part of it is his surroundings, where the offensive line isn't good. He's not getting blocking, and his receivers aren't getting separation.
Yep, and I think that comes to one of the things I think we've talked about a couple times, where a lot of those mistakes we've seen recently out of him is where he's trying to do too much. And I think it's just because he knows, 1, his line isn't holding up for most of the time, and then 2, are his receivers going to get open? So he's trying to force more than he can actually physically do. And I don't think he was doing that before, just because he had more faith in the whole process and the operation and the blocking. It wasn't great his first year, but it wasn't this bad. So
the first 6 games, there were some bad moments, but he never received pressure like he has the last 4 games. And then after week 5, week 6, the offensive line actually played really well until the end of the season.
Yeah, so I think that's the big thing, where he's just doesn't have the faith in everything around him, and he's gotten sped up. And so where if this was his first year, he probably would have stopped, set his feet, and make the throw. But this time he doesn't trust that he has the time to actually do that, and he's trying to make a throw that he physically just can't make. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not one of these.
This game, I don't even blame. This game, it wasn't even the throw he can't make. It's just he completely missed. The game against Dallas where he threw the pick 6, that's a throw where he shouldn't be making.
No, this one he was throwing it on the run, and then he tried to throw. He was throwing it kind of across his body.
That's true.
So that's a throw that he physically shouldn't be trying to make. It's not, and even true. Tom Brady wouldn't be. It made a lot of mistakes that way. There's the Steelers interception he threw, and it was the week before, either the week or 2 before that Jets game or Bills game, whatever that get right game was in 2018, where he threw across his body, trying to just make a play. And so something that a lot of quarterbacks can't do it. Most can't. There's only a select few that actually can physically actually do that and have the arm strength without the legs to do it. And he's just not one of them. And it's not something that's a knock on him, because I would say 90% of quarterbacks in the NFL can't make that throw. So that's the one where you have to stop, set your feet, and throw it to him. Or if you don't think you have the time, throw it out of bounds, and then it's 3rd and 4, and you have another opportunity.
That's another thing with him too, is he has to learn better of when to take a sack or when to throw it away instead of trying to do too much. Sometimes a sack, yes, it sucks, but you at least live to play another down, versus an interception or something like that where it turns into points or gives the opposing team the ball.
Yep. So we talked a lot about the offense. I think one of the things that we want to just get into it, how it started to look better in the second half.
Yep.
What did you think were some of the reasons for that, and what can they kind of harness from that, and then try and get better against the Bills?
So there's a couple things. Trent Brown played really well. So having at least a steady left tackle was some benefit.
Mhm.
Granted, Mafia at left guard was bad, but you at least knew on the left side you were going to be okay. You got some positive runs, which helped set up the passing game. And I think one thing that we've been calling for 2.5 years, and we finally saw, was just putting Kendrick Bourne in the slot. He's very shifty. He's one of your best playmakers on offense, him and Stevenson, even though Stevenson's kind of having a down year,
Mhm.
mostly because of the surroundings. But
I'd
get
actually even argue that Zeke has actually outplayed Stevenson now the last game or two.
yeah, no, agreed 100%. But you get Kendrick Bourne the ball, and then also the Raiders were terrible in man coverage. Bourne is shifty and elusive, and you saw him break tackles and break away. So just get him the ball, do quick slants, quick routes to, and then that helps slow down the pass rush, which is something we've been calling for weeks. But
Mhm.
putting Bourne in the slot, he was caught 10. He had 10 catches on 10 targets in the slot. So that I think
Yep.
that's something we should be seeing going forward, unless Pop is back and then you put Pop in the slot. But again, you could, I don't know.
I'd rather see. Well, you can have kind of two slot receivers on
Yeah,
both
yeah,
ends, or the Z. Um, but I think the biggest thing with Bourne, we've said this, where a lot of the times he's got in trouble and they stop playing him just because he's prone to make, and I'm willing to accept it. He's going to make probably 2 to 3 mistakes a game where he runs the wrong route. He's not on the same page. But the benefit of him being out there is so much more than like a Parker or even Juju right now, or even Gasecki. Really, any of the guys they have other than Pop. So
yeah.
I'd say the benefit of having him out there and the playmaking ability that he has outweighs those couple risks. And I'm willing to say, he's going to make the risk. You just have to live with it and hope that you don't make a turnover over it, because you're making turnovers anyway. So
Yep.
you might as well put your better players out there.
Yep.
All right.
Agreed 100%. And I think also we saw some part of it, I think, was also the Raiders mismatches in man, but we saw
Mhm.
Zeke where he should have had a 75-yard touchdown where the refs called holding, which shouldn't really
Mhm.
been holding.
Mhm.
But Zeke has shown some explosiveness. Part of it is probably just from him not getting all the workload that he was getting in Dallas. But he's someone that you can see what he can do both in the run game as well as in the catch game.
Mhm.
So maybe have some plays where you feature both Stevenson and Zeke, some plays where maybe if Stevenson isn't doing great, you feature Zeke more. And that just gives you another playmaker, especially compared to what you have with
Mhm.
so far this year with Parker, Juju, even Gasecki, who hasn't been that good. Um, even the Gasecki in the red zone hasn't been anything, and they've
Mhm.
been taking him out at times, which you would think you have a 6'6" slot receiver, keep him in the red zone, but maybe
Mhm.
they just don't trust him, or it just might be some play calling. But
Yep.
again,
Uh,
also the first half, too, I think part of the thing is just too predictable on play calling. Whereas in the second half, they did have some more unpredictability.
mhm.
But I think that's been contributing to slow starts, which you would think your first two drives, all your plays are essentially scripted. That's when you should be
Mhm.
scoring every week. And the Patriots, I don't think, have scored a touchdown in the first quarter this whole season, which is
Mhm.
kind of sad considering you thought Bill O'Brien's one of the best offensive coaches in football.
Yep. I would say not even think. I still would say that he is.
Yep.
Just because I think every time I go to this, he gets to the playoffs with Brian Hoyer as his quarterback. So
Yep.
if you can do that, I think you're a pretty good offensive coach.
Agreed.
A defense, because we got to start moving on to them. I think they play pretty well. They obviously play really well, and they limited Devontae Adams. He had 2 catches in the game. Obviously, he was really upset after the game. He went to Twitter, um, and to kind of really complain when someone was explaining why he was frustrated. Um, and I think that again, they do a pretty good job about limiting him whenever they
Yeah, I
can.
think the last two games, including last year, he's combined for 6 catches on, I believe, 40 yards,
Mhm.
which you could argue Devontae Adams is a top 2 or 3 receiver in all of football.
Yep, and they really screwed me on fantasy this week. So if he got 6 more points, I would have won. Um, but But yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. JC Jackson, I think, is really returning to form, like
Yeah.
we saw when he was with the Patriots, and it really just shows you really how inept I think Staley is.
Yep.
Where and a lot of people are saying this even when the Chargers signed him, saying that they didn't think he was going to be a fit there, just because they run a very zone heavy scheme there, and the Patriots they have been playing a lot more zone, but when they allow JC to really line man to man with someone, and I think he's really doing well with that. He's not showing like he's really lost much with the knee because he was able to run step with step with Adams. Again, I wouldn't put him on Hill in 2 weeks or even Diggs he might have a little bit of trouble with, but you
Yeah.
would want safety help over the top. But but yeah, I think he was able to show that he's not this terrible cornerback that Tommy Curran was saying that he was
Yeah.
when they traded for him. I think it really more shows that it was the coaching situation in the place that he was at rather than the actual player himself. So
Yeah.
I was actually really impressed with him. Barmore, again, I think has been terrific the last few weeks.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and then
And a lot of reporters were saying this, and you could even see it during the game where Barmore, his first year, he was really great at pass rush.
mhm,
His deficiencies were more in the run game. This was
mhm,
by far his best game defending the run,
mhm,
which he's kind of had to with Aquali being hurt and
mhm,
Gotchow being banged up to take
yeah,
over that role of being more of a 3 down defensive tackle.
mhm.
He's been really excellent.
Yeah, I think going forward, he could be one of these top five defensive tackles in the league
Yep.
because he's got the pass rush, he got the run. So again, he could end up turning to be like an Aaron Donald sort of player. Um,
Yeah, I want to go that far. Aaron Donald's a top 3 to 5 all-time defensive player. I don't think
mhm.
Barmore's in that category, but
No, but
he could.
I would say a top five defensive tackle in the league year over
Yeah,
year.
yeah, I agree.
Um, so I couldn't just think of anyone other than him. So
Haloti Ngata.
yeah, he's not gonna be a Vince Wilfork. He's not 400 pounds,
Yeah,
but again, he's going to be one of those good players out there. And then I'm the first to willing to admit this. Tavai has really stepped up this year and really showed um, that Bill knew more than he's one of those linebackers that he just ends up coming around and out of nowhere.
yep.
He did the same thing with Ninkovich. He did the same thing with Vrabel back in the day. It's just these
Van Noy.
linebackers. Van Noy was another one. These random guys that you think, oh, this guy sucks when you first
Yeah,
see him, and then eventually he's one of their best linebackers out there. So,
yeah.
um,
He was excellent.
mhm,
He's been excellent all season, and it just things like this. I still remember in training camp or preseason, Andrew Callahan saying that Bill overvalues certain people compared to the rest of the team, where he's going to have someone like Tavai on the team where he's probably not going to make the roster anywhere else. But Tavai's been one of the best linebackers in football this year. Just part of it's scheme, part of it is Bill having him played at his strengths, but
mhm,
it just shows that reporters, especially in this market with their biases, are just
mhm,
either don't fully know what they're talking about or they have
mhm,
such a massive agenda that they're not seeing rationally.
mhm. All right. So anything else on the D you want to hit on very quickly before we get to threat three down?
Yep. So just two quick things. I thought one thing that was really good was their defense and scoring position. Raiders had 6 chances in scoring position inside the 30 or inside the 35. They only allowed 1 touchdown on 6 chances, 4 field goals, and then an interception. The bad thing is they allowed 6 scoring chances, with 2 of them to Brian frickin' Hoyer, which to the Raiders they only allowed 19 points on offense, which should be enough to win the game. But considering who they're playing next, with the Bills next week, the Dolphins the week after, you can't be allowing 6 scoring chances and expect to win. You can't expect the defense to bend, no, don't break against these teams. You're going to have to stop them earlier on in the possession. You're going to have to force some turnovers. So that's just one thing that's concerning a little bit, was they were bend, don't break this game. But against the offenses you're going up against in the coming weeks, you can't trust that bending but not breaking.
Yep. All right. Moving on. Three up, three down. If you want to list yours real quick, and then I'll go with mine.
So I think ours are similar. My number one was Tavai. Like we mentioned, he's been excellent this year. He had 5 solo tackles, 2 assists, 1 pass deflect, and then he had that interception. He's just been one of your most dependable players on defense. Number two, Jabril Peppers, 7 tackles, and then the huge hit that led to that interception. And I think he's been one of your best defenders as well. I think he's been outplaying Duggar. Granted, him and Duggar don't always play the same role week to week, but I think he's been your best. I'd say the best
I'd
defensive
say he's
player
your
all year.
best strong safety too, out of the
Yeah,
two of them. So that's why this is one thing where the two of us kind of go back and forth. Not really back and forth. I think we both agree on this, but each week we're like, well, if you have to pick one of them, because you really probably can't pay the two of them in the future,
long term.
and long term,
You
really.
have Peppers under contract for next year,
Yeah,
and Duggar's a free agent this year.
yeah.
But
So realistically, you probably can't have the two of them paid after this year. So it's either one of you might be able to pay Duggar for 1 year, but then you'd be getting rid of Pepper. So who would you rather keep long term? I guess is the short answer. And
and
I
they're
think
both
both of
about the
us.
same age. Peppers is I think 10 months older, but
And I would go with Peppers just because I think he's the better strong safety of the two of them. He's a bigger hitter, which isn't really something you really always pay for. But I feel like he's got more instinct, I think, than Duggar does. I think Duggar still lacks some of that, and that's why we see a lot of breakdowns with him still, where he'll flash for 80% of the game, but then he's got that one or two play that really screws them. We saw that time over time last year.
yeah,
We've seen it
Dolphins
this year.
game. Yeah.
Where he just lets up a play at the wrong possible time. And you don't see that as much with Peppers. You did see a little bit at the beginning of the season, but this is really the first full season that he's healthy. Because last year he's coming back from the ACL. But I love Peppers. All
Yeah, me too.
right. Not to derail you. What's your last one, and then your honorable mention?
Last one, Kendrick Bourne, excellent. Your best offensive playmaker this game. 10 catches, all on the slot for 89 yards. Broke some tackles, and he was most reliable guy. And going forward, you have to feed him. And then just honorable mention quickly, J.C. Jackson, only 2 catches allowed on 7 targets for 27 yards. And then in part helped hold Devontae Adams 2 catches. And then it's only been 2 games, but it looks like he's returning to the Pro Bowl caliber cornerback he was with the Patriots. I'm not saying he's the top 3 cornerback in the NFL right now, but he's obviously better than what they have currently with who's healthy. And he's someone that going forward, if he can get back to his old self, he might be worth what's left of his contract of $14 million a year. And then going forward next year, you have Gonzo, Jack Jones, JC Jackson as your top 3 with Marcus and John in the slot. If you keep John, considering his injury history, but
Yeah, and even I was saying that before to someone else where I would definitely keep him if he's up playing at this $14 million is kind of a bargain right now for
yeah.
a cornerback, top cornerback.
And
Then
it's not guaranteed
Gonzo's,
too. So
yeah,
if he
so
sucks
you can
next
just
year, you
cut
can
him
move
after,
on.
yeah, you can cut him. Where he actually might want to restructure on here. So maybe it's something where he actually restructures for less, but gets some more guaranteed money, and maybe only a year or two, and then he hit free agency again. But yeah, I would definitely, if you can keep next year, their secondary could be amazing. Or you have him and Gonzo 1 and 2. You have Jack Jones, and then you have Marcus Jones for the slot. And then I would say I would actually advocate for moving Jonathan Jones to free safety because you don't really have that position right now. And I don't think really any of the safeties right now really thrive in that situation. So I think that could be even a better play there.
Yeah, good point.
All right, moving on. Real quick, mine. I got Tavai like you. Trent Brown, a little different than you. He was your best offensive tackle, one of
Yeah.
his best games of the year. Kendrick Bourne, like you said, and then Zeke. It was really good in this game. It was probably best game of the year for that.
Yep, I'll agree. Do you want to go with your down first since I went first?
Yeah, I got Lowe and Muffy. They're worst offensive linemen. They were terrible. Lowe had that really bad. The last play of the game was unacceptable. And then Parker, that last catch where he missed it was awful. That was one of Mac's best throws of his career, and he missed it. And then he had that lazy play at the beginning, where not the beginning, but where he ended up running a lazy route,
Yep.
and they missed the pass. It would have been a first down.
Yep.
And
with him, the last year and a half, we've just seen this over and over again. Where in Miami, he was known for making those contested plays and being a tough receiver, whereas this whole season and even last year, we see him get outmanned by cornerbacks who are smaller than him that lead to interceptions. Him not running the wrong route or not finishing his route, just giving up on it early, which leads to incompletions. And then this one, which was a gotta have it catch right in his hands, and he just doesn't catch it. It's just getting to unacceptable, and it's kind of frustrating, especially since they extended him. And Bill has had a couple of extensions where you give guys contract extensions and they don't perform. We saw
Yeah.
it with Jonnu Smith last year where they extended him and he just was terrible. We saw it with Parker now,
We
and it's
saw it
just
even with Wynn when they picked up his 5th year option, then he was
yeah.
lazy after that. It was just a complete moron because if he played if he actually worked hard in the off season, he would have gotten paid. Where now he's getting what $2 million, where he could have gotten easily
Yeah.
over $10 million a year.
But after this game, I think you can't trust Parker, and you have to give the other guys a chance. Booty, I would trust Booty more than Parker, unless again we're not seeing practice, so I don't know if Booty just doesn't know what the hell he's doing,
Yeah,
or
which
if
wouldn't surprise me.
yeah.
But I think one thing too was after this game, or even after the last couple of games, I think this is one thing where I think Bill's changed a little bit with how the times have gone. Where it's a different league than it was before. The players are different; they're softer than they used to be. Where I think 20 years ago, when you can get away with a lot more things, and I think he would have cut one of them. I think he would have either. I know it's really hard to do with the players that are on the contract, but you need to set an example at some point, and someone has to be to blame. And you can't have this laziness and unacceptable kind of route running and missed catches by both Parker and even Juju's looked like shit. So
Yeah.
one of them would have been made an example of, and Parker would have made more sense just because he's not under contract as long. So you could deal with the
I
dead
thought he
money.
was extended for they're both under
He
contract
he
the same way.
is. Well, I think they're both guaranteed for this year or next year. Um, so I guess they both could, but what's his name? Juju's do more guaranteed money than Parker is.
Yeah.
So
And Juju at least has some upside. We've seen it. Parker the last year and a half, we haven't seen anything from him to expect anything's going
we've
to
seen a
change.
few things where he's had those toe touch catches,
Yeah,
but we
that's
haven't
fair.
seen it this year.
Yeah.
Where last year we did see it towards the end of the year. We saw a lot of those different slants that he would have or in cuts that actually ran pretty well. I don't still trust him anymore. He's not strong enough to catch. I'd rather give it to someone else, give the opportunity, than have him keep trotting out there because I don't think he's the one for it. And then the last one there, real quick, Gasecki. There wasn't a ton in the game that made him low. I just think the last play of the game again was also unacceptable. He was there to double Crosby, which wasn't really done much of the game, and that's why also I think Mac thought he was going to have more time because he knew that Crosby was going to be double there, and he didn't do anything for that, and he ended up falling and tripping on his route, which he wasn't going to be thrown to, but he just looked like a complete imbecile out there. And then the diving catch that he had, it shouldn't even required to be diving. He ran a sloppy route there, and if he actually ran the route the right way, he would have gotten caught in stride. So I have him down there. Real quick before we get into the Bills predictions, Pat's chances going forward. You have on
I
here.
just wanted, I
I
didn't
think.
give my three down, which
Oh
are pretty
shit,
much
yeah.
the same. Devontae Parker, number one, Lowe, number two, Mafia, number three. And then
All right.
just to harp on Gasecki, he was brought in. He was under Bill O'Brien at Penn State, so O'Brien knew him, or at least O'Brien recruited him. And then he's had 2 year, not this previous year, but the two prior years, 700 receiving yards in back-to-back years. And then he 18 career touchdowns with 5 last year. This year in 6 games, only 15 catches, 144 yards, no touchdowns. Just not what he was signed to do. And hopefully you incorporate him more. But again, just another player that you signed with upside that just hasn't lived up to it in this scheme. But we'll have to see.
Okay.
Pat's chances going forward. Patriots are 1-5, like you mentioned. In the previous 5 years, there have been 3 teams that started the year 1-5 and made the playoffs. And there's another one, the Dolphins in 2021 that started the season 1-7, which it's looking like the Patriots are probably going to start the season 1-7. And then they finished the year winning 8 of their last 9 to finish 9-8. And then that didn't get them in the playoffs in 2021. That needed 10 wins to get in the playoffs. But this year, 9 wins might get you in the playoffs. Maybe even 8 wins might get you in the playoffs. So it's just showing that there have been teams that turned it around in the prior years. So it's not to say the season is all complete or all just finished. The next 2 games is what's going to be tough. Is the Bills this week, very tough game, even though it's at home, and then the Dolphins the following week. So just looking at that, You're 1-7 if you lose both of them. If that happens, you essentially have to win 8 of your last 9. You're facing Washington, which should be a win. Indianapolis and Germany should be a win. They're also without Anthony Richardson for the rest of the year. Giants at Giants, that should be a win. Chargers at home. Staley's the worst coach in football, and Bill knows how to defend Herbert. So it makes sense they could win that game. Steelers at Steelers on a Thursday night. I don't think Kenny Pickett's that good. That could be a win. And then the last 4 games are Kansas City, Denver should be a win, Buffalo, and then the Jets should be a win. So if they do lose the next 2 games, they have to at least split between Kansas City and Buffalo at the end of the year. Judon might be back by the end of the year. Slight unlikely chance that Gonzo is back at the end of the year too. So just having more good players on defense could maybe get a game where the defense wins it against Buffalo. But the Patriots also against the Chiefs don't look like the same team this year as they were the previous couple years. And Bill always historically knows how to slow down the Chiefs offense. So even if you lose against Buffalo and Miami, there still is a shot if you win the games you're supposed to win the rest of the year, and then at least split between Kansas City and Buffalo. Granted, if they win the games they're supposed to the rest of the year, is not a guarantee considering what they've done this year. So I wouldn't even bank on that. But just showing that there is a path forward to the playoffs, even if they go 1-7. I think the realistic possibility is if you split between Buffalo and Miami, and then the rest of the year you essentially have 2 extra losses to work with. It's going to be tough, especially morale wise, if you start the year 1-7 to make it. But like I said, the Dolphins started the year 1-7 and finished at 9-8.
Yep. I think another thing here to really mention is just how going. Actually, before I mention that, I think you really hit most of those things on the head, and then we'll get into the Bills thing. But one thing I did want to bring up was just some of the reports that have been coming out this last week, and a lot of people are just trying to write off the Patriots and really write off Bill. I think is the biggest thing, and trying to mark this really dynasty as dead, and Bill is dead, and Bill making mistakes. So I'd like to say this one. We've talked about this, but we have to really harp on this. I think again, just because a lot of the slander that's been out there against Bill, where you have Albert Breer, who obviously he makes shit up every single story he has. Whenever it's I think or my gut or my opinion,
after talking to people in the building, I think or I believe or things like that, where he's not actually getting reports, he's just making stuff up. It's his thoughts, but trying to pass it off as a report without actually saying it's a report.
And yes, Bill could be gone after this year, for all we know. It could get really ugly, and he could be gone. They could both maybe think that a change is needed. But I also don't think it would happen anything. Wouldn't happen the same as any other coach would happen, just because there's been too much history between the two of them. There's too much respect that the two of them have for each other. So obviously any of these conversations are going to be started already, where they've been talking about what an exit plan could look like, what would happen. It won't be or outright firing, I don't think. And Bill, I would like this. I'm not an idiot. He has some of the responsibility here, where he's put the Patriots in the position on offense, where we've seen, and we've talked about this, the way that you have a rookie contract for a quarterback, and you should be spending the money around him and lifting him up. And we've seen this with a ton of quarterbacks throughout the league. We've seen it with Tua, where Tua, I still don't think he's that good. I think he's in.
If you watch him, it's all his first read. If his first read isn't there, he just doesn't do anything.
I think he's
since his receivers are so fat,
quarterback. Yeah, I think he's above average quarterback. He's probably a top 15 to 20. Maybe this the way that how many quarterbacks are bad. He could be a 10 to 20 quarterback range. He's not any top 10. He's not this MVP candidate. He's got a ton of talent around him. And then look at what happened when he had Parker and Gesicki around him as his top options. Yeah. And that's what Mac has now. You see what he's looking at. You see Jalen Hurts. You see Brock Purdy. But look what happened with Samuel and McCaffrey got hurt. Purdy kind of looked what you would think he would look like. You have all these different things around quarterbacks. And look at Goff. He was terrible before. Now he's looking like he actually what's going on. So it's just there's different situations around him. I think it's not really that the quarterback's any better. It's just really nature versus nurture, where the quarterbacks need a lot around them. Not
Yep.
unless you have a top five quarterback, and really not even top five. I would say top three, top two to top three quarterback, where you can elevate everyone around them. You're not going to win unless you have the surroundings around the quarterback, and they've done a terrible job at doing that, I would say. And I would say if Bill agrees to like a GM change or something like that, I would still support him being the coach in
Yep.
that situation. I don't know if he'd want to do that, but he's not an idiot either. So that might happen. But again, let's go into the Bills and your predictions.
Yeah, so the Bills, again, another tough matchup where they've pretty much had your number since 2020. The Patriots they're 1-5 with the only win being the wind game. Actually, 1-6 if you count the playoffs, with most of the games being blowouts. It's going to depend on a lot of things. I know the Patriots defense in 2020, 2021, and even parts of last year wasn't fast enough to really slow down the Bills offense, which is part of the reason why they lost those games. Where granted, the Bills defense was also good and Patriots couldn't score, but even if you score 17 points or 30 points, it's not going to do anything if you're giving up 49 points and not punting every single time. A couple of things for optimism is Bill last year. We saw his defense do a better job versus the Bills than they did in the prior couple of years, where they were able to slow them down. At least the first game, they gave up 24 points, even though it didn't really seem like Patriots had a shot. They were still within it the whole game. Last game of the year, only gave up 20 points on offense, two touchdowns and 2 field goals. But the 2 kick returns for touchdowns is what really had them lose the game. Whereas if they didn't do that, the Patriots could have theoretically won 21-20 and made it to the playoffs. So we have seen the defense do a better job. Defense this year, they are banged up, but they still have some pieces to slow it down, where we saw the Raiders only get 19 points. We saw the defense, even though they were more healthy at the time, slow down the Eagles offense, slow down the Dolphins offense. And we also have seen the Bills not play up to their strengths or not be the traditional Bills the past couple of years. They had a bad game versus the Giants last week. But again, that was also the Giants head coach is Brian Daboll, who is the Bills offensive coordinator for years. So he might have had a good knowledge of how to stop Josh Allen. Then we also saw them play bad against the Jaguars. But again, that was also in London, time zone difference could have contributed to it too. So
The
there are
Jaguars
some
have
things
played
the
them
Bills
really
are.
well over the
What was
last
that?
couple of years as well. So the Jaguars have played them well over the
Yeah,
last few years as well too.
exactly. So we do see that they're not playing up to their full strength. And that actually worries me a little bit just because I don't know if I'm going to see Josh Allen and the Bills offense play bad 3 straight weeks, especially since Josh has had the Patriots number the last few years. But there is some things of optimism. Bills defense is also banged up. You could argue they're without their 2 best defensive players, and Matt Milano, who's one of the best linebackers in football, and Tre'Davious White, who's one of the best cornerbacks in football. They still have an excellent defensive line. You could argue one of the best defensive lines and pass rushes in football, which is something that Mac and Bill talked about this week. You also have really one of the best safety combos in football with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And you still have some cornerbacks that are good as well. So it is going to be a tough challenge, both for the Patriots offense versus the Bills defense and the Patriots defense versus the Bills offense. Stephon Diggs.
2, 3, go. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really big challenge for him. I think the biggest thing that I'm afraid of is really what you're afraid of, where we don't usually see Josh Allen having 3 bad games in a row. And I don't think that's going to happen. And we'll see that when we get to our predictions. Anything else you want to talk about the Bills before we go into that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is going to be stopping Stephon Diggs. Since Diggs has come to the Bills, he has just been unstoppable versus the Patriots. Almost every single game having 100 yards receiving. With I believe the only game he didn't was the wind game. Let me see if I can find that quick. But anyway, whether it was Jonathan Jones covering him or J.C. Jackson, they haven't had a good plan of stopping him. So that's something that they're really going to have to scheme up this week to try and find a way to take him out of the game, make the other people beat you. you're able to stop Stephon Diggs. You even without Gonzalez, without Marcus Jones, you do have the pieces to slow down Gabriel Davis. You have the pieces to slow down the other receivers. So my thought is you're going to have to slow down the Bills offense, but that starts with taking out Stephon Diggs. And then the second thing you're going to have to do is slow down the Bills running attack. So we'll have to see if that really happens. But I think those are the two keys to the game for the Patriots defense.
All right. Going to prediction time. Bills favored by 8.5 points now. I think it was 9.5 earlier in the week.
I have the Stephon Diggs stats just to quickly say 6 games. So 6 catches, 92 yards, 9 catches, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. In the wind game, 4 catches for 51 yards. And then the last 3 games, 7 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. That was in the playoffs. And then last year, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And then 7 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. So that's not good. And traditionally, the Patriots defense slows down or takes away a team's number one option. But with Diggs, they just have not been able to do that.
Yep. It's really frustrating that Gonzo's not here because I think he would have been able to be the one to do it because he's tall, fast. I think he would have had the opportunity to do it. All right. Bills favored 8.5 points. Over under is only 40, which is I feel like one of the lowest over unders we've had in a while, but it's probably just because the Patriots have not scored. So I think that's the reason why. I've got Bills winning this 31-17. I just don't think the Patriots have enough offense on here, and I think the Bills are going to have too good of a game compared to what they've looked like the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm similar. I have Patriots losing. I have the Bills winning 31-16, where Patriots get 1 touchdown and then 3 field goals. But if you want some optimism, like we said, Bills have struggled the last couple of weeks. Last year, the Patriots defense played the Bills offense better and better. And then also, Patriots offense wasn't perfect versus the Raiders, but it looked like they were getting things better. They were able to move the ball, which they weren't able to do the prior weeks. So if that might have been a get it right game for the offense to start to find ways to get things around, with the Bills defense also being banged up, missing their 2 best players, which Patriots defense is also missing their 2 best players. But again, if you want some optimism, which I don't have, those are some things to look at.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for listening to us. Make sure you give us a follow, subscribe, and review Pat's 300 Level Pod, Instagram and Twitter, and follow us on YouTube. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys next week. And hopefully there's somehow a win and we get this wrong. So thank you very much, guys.